Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Today is mock draft number 11. It's the last one I'm going to be doing before the actual NFL draft. The NFL draft is 2 days away. You guys should be seeing this on Tuesday morning. Now, off rip, I'm just going to say normally I do my mock drafts on Monday. Mock draft Monday, it's got a nice ring to it. It's what I normally do, it's what I've been doing the last 10 weeks. But for two reasons, I didn't do it on Monday this week. Reason number one is because I actually did record, post, and edit it. But for some reason, YouTube just decided not to post it. So nobody saw it except for me, which is great. But reason number two, the reason I decided to redo it instead of trying to salvage that video and maybe repost it and try it again was because when I was at work yesterday, there was a trade and it shook up the first round of the draft. Now, the Aaron Rodgers trade, made a video on that already. Go ahead and check that video out if you haven't already. But it does change up the draft order, so we do need to add it to the mock draft. I'm kind of glad this way because I want to have the most accurate mock draft possible. And obviously, in my first edition, I did not have the 13 and 15 pick being swapped just yet. So now that we know this information, we can go ahead and make a more accurate mock draft. So possibly this is cheating, but at the same time, it's my channel and I make the rules. All right. Really quick before we get started, make sure to subscribe. We're almost at 100 subscribers. We want to get that by the end of draft night. So please, please, please do it. And if you do, then I will bake you fresh cookies. Sounds like a pretty good deal to me. Anyway, let's go ahead and start with this mock draft. You guys didn't see the first one, so you have nothing to compare it to. It's a little bit changed from my most recent one just because the draft order moves some things around, but it's largely the same, and I have largely a lot of the same opinions. This mock draft is going to be a bit longer than my other ones because I'm going to be going in depth pretty much on every pick and explaining why I think that, why this player is the move. Again, these mock drafts are not what I would do, but it's what I think will happen. It is based on reports, it's based on what makes sense, it's based on team needs, coach history, all that type of stuff. So I've assembled what I think is my best mock draft to date. It's used the most amount of research. I've spent the most time stressing over it, making sure it's perfect for you guys. And the system that I'm going to use to grade my mock draft is I'm going to give myself 1 point correct for the team selecting the player, and then I'm going to give myself 1 point correct for the player going into the draft position. So, for example, I have Bryce Young going first overall. It's pretty obvious. I'm not spoiling anything yet. If the Panthers take Bryce Young, that's a point. And if Bryce Young goes first overall, that's a point, right? Okay, that kind of makes sense. So if I get both, I'm going to make that 3 points. So my goal is to get about 15 points in this draft, 15 to 20 points. Hopefully I can get correct. So that'll be about 5 or 6 picks exactly correct, and then a few players either to the right team or to the right slot because we know there's going to be trades. I'm not going to go through and stress myself out with thinking about all the different trades. I might mention a team that I think could trade back, but it was so much pressure already trying to get who I think is going to each team that I didn't want to do it to myself with trades. All right, let's go ahead and get started. First overall, we got Bryce Young going to the Panthers. I know I just said it a few minutes ago. It's fairly obvious. The reason I think this is because a couple of reasons. A, the Panthers are a quarterback needy team. I think Bryce Young is the best quarterback in this draft class, and many people agree with me on that. Additionally, the Panthers would not have traded up to number one overall if they didn't have a guy that they really, really, really love. That you don't give up all those assets for a mystery, right? I think Bryce Young is an elite processor. He's accurate. He can make and extend plays. His pocket presence is the best I've ever seen coming out of the draft. I think the Panthers like all of that. All of that. They have a decent offensive line, which is, I think, what you need to give Bryce Young, and I think mediocre receivers, which he can work with. He worked with at Alabama. Bryce Young's a pick at number one. Not many people are going to disagree with me there. Pick number two is, I think, where it gets interesting. And a lot of people ask each year, where does the draft start? The draft starts at pick number two this year. The Houston Texans, there's been a lot of reports recently that they're not going to go with CJ Stroud as we previously thought because of that S2 cognition test. CJ Stroud reportedly ranked 18%. Guys like Bryce Young scored 98. Will Levis scored fairly high. Anthony Richardson did pretty good as well. So CJ Stroud seems to be falling a little bit, and he's definitely off the board for number two by most people's opinion. Now, the question for the Houston Texans is, do we go with our number two quarterback available, or do we take the best defensive player available? And in previous drafts, I had them going defense because of the D'Amico Ryans connection. He's a defensive guy, obviously, but from what I've been seeing, Houston really likes Will Levis. A lot of the Houston guys are talking about Will Levis to the Texans. Will Levis is now the betting favorite on a lot of sports books to go number 2 overall. And I've said this before, sports books, they know more than us. They know more than the common fan. They have connections with guys in the league offices. They have connections with coaches, players, scouts, everything. Like, they have connections. They are going to do whatever they can to make the most amount of money possible. So the fact that I think he's the betting favorite right now says a lot. So I think Will Levis is going to go number 2 overall to the Houston Texans. Again, not what I would do, but what I think the Texans will do. And they get their quarterback there at number 2. That leaves the Cardinals at number 3. I think the Cardinals are a team that, they're going to field some calls to trade down in this draft class. Don't be surprised if the Cardinals trade down and acquire some more assets for their rebuild. But for the sake of this mock, I have them sticking at number 3. And I think if they stay at 3 and the board plays out the way that it does the first 2 picks, like I predict, the choice is fairly obvious. And that's Will Anderson, the edge rusher out of Alabama. In my opinion, the best defensive player in this draft, the best defensive prospect in this draft, excuse me. A guy that really can jumpstart your defense. The whole Cardinals defense, but specifically their defensive line is just drained of talent. J.J. Watt retired, Zach Allen left in free agency, and you bring in Jonathan Gallen, a defensive guy from the Eagles, to fix the defense. You need to give him the ammunition to do so. I think Will Anderson is a great player and a guy that they would love to take at 3. So if they don't get a king's ransom to move down from 3, I think Will Anderson is fine as well. Number 4, the Indianapolis Colts. I have them taking C.J. Stroud. Now listen, I know C.J. Stroud's been falling in the draft, and there's a lot of reports and everything like that, right? The Colts are desperate for a quarterback, and they're not probably going to get one of the top 2 guys unless they really make a big move up and give up a lot of stuff. So for the Colts to take C.J. Stroud and to land him at 4, I think is a good spot for them. I still think that they really like C.J. Stroud, and they think that he's able to be a good professional quarterback. He's got great accuracy. He's got great ball placement. He's going to play in the dome, and that's a great environment for quarterbacks to play in that dome in Indianapolis. I think they're completely fine staying pat and taking C.J. Stroud at number 4, a guy that they reportedly really like. And, their owner, Jim Irsay, has not been quiet about the fact that they're going to go with quarterbacks. So I think if the board plays out like this, they're going to be totally fine taking C.J. Stroud. I don't think they have a big gap in their big board on any of these 4 guys. And I think that they're going to take the best available one in C.J. Stroud. Now at number 5, it gets interesting again. Because the Colts, I think, are just going to take whoever's their top-ranked quarterback. Seattle's very interesting at number 5. Seattle could go, depending on the board plays out, with one of the 2 top edge rushers, either Will Anderson or Tyree Wilson. They could go with a defensive tackle mega prospect who has some off-the-field issues in Jalen Carter. It's also been reported that they really like Devon Witherspoon, the corner from Illinois. But I have them taking somebody who I think would be the ultimate wild card in Seattle, and that's Anthony Richardson. Now, why do I think Anthony Richardson's going to Seattle? A couple of reasons I think this, right? First of all, this 5th overall pick shouldn't even be ours. It's the Broncos pick. So you're essentially playing with house money right here, right? That's number 1. Number 2, Seattle has never in the Pete Carroll and John Schneider era had the draft ammunition to go out and get one of the premier quarterbacks in the draft. Throughout the Russell Wilson area and this past season with Geno, we're picking in the 20s, we're picking in the maybe even 30s. So we haven't had the ability to go get one of the premier talents in the draft. Now, despite that, obviously, we've still scouted the quarterbacks, and we've still, put grades on everybody. That's what good general managers do. They put grades on every prospect, even the guys that they'll never be able to draft in a million years. And throughout that process, they had very, very high grades on Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. So much so to the fact that they wish that they could have drafted him. And obviously, it's good to look back in hindsight and say, oh, well, they got that evaluation right. But I think not only is it a good confidence booster, I think it's a sign that Seattle secretly has wanted to draft quarterbacks for many years, but they were stable enough with Russell Wilson to where they never had to. And additionally, again, like I said, they never had the draft picks to go and do that. I think this year is a rare opportunity with Seattle where they have a top 5 pick. It's house money. They have an evaluation on a quarterback, and they really like him in Anthony Richardson, which that's what all the reports say, is that they love. They're head over heels in love with Anthony Richardson. Additionally, that Geno Smith contract, you might be saying, oh, well, it's a 3-year deal. Well, there's an opt-out after 1 year where it's very easy to maneuver away Geno Smith from Seattle, allow Anthony Richardson to play in his 2nd season, which is what I think he needs. I think that's a perfect spot for Anthony Richardson to where he doesn't have to start year 1. Maybe you can bring him in on the goal line or 4th and 1, 3rd and short, have him run power or counter or sneaker, anything like that. but not really play him as a quarterback in year one. And obviously, he's got weapons. He's got K9. He's got two young tackles that will get much better. He's got DK, a really, really good young wide receiver. I think this is a perfect spot for Anthony Richardson, and I think it provides Seattle a rare opportunity to take a quarterback that they have very highly ranked out of the draft. I think Anthony Richardson's the move here at number 5, and I would love it if I was a Seahawks fan. I would love it. Pick number 6. Pick 6 going with a cornerback. That seems like pretty good irony to me. I have the Detroit Lions taking Devon Witherspoon, the corner from Illinois. A couple of reasons I think this. They traded away Jeff Okudah, so they obviously need some more cornerback depth. And I don't think they would have traded away Jeff Okudah if they didn't know that they could land one of the premier corners at number 6. Reportedly, Devon Witherspoon is the top ranked corner on their big board. I think he fits well with the way that Dan Campbell wants to play. He wants to play a big, physical, aggressive style of defense. I think that's what Witherspoon does really well. He'll stick his nose, he'll tackle, he'll play the run. That's his MO. And I think Detroit, they want to improve their defense. That's kind of the last. That's the last. That's the last Jenga block in their tower of success. That's an analogy for you. How about that, Colin Cowherd? Anyway, I think that they really like Devon Witherspoon, and I think that the pick is fairly even here. I forgot to mention this with Seattle, but pick number 5, in my opinion, is where the Jalen Carter watch starts. He could easily go 5 to Seattle. I think he could easily go 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I don't think he makes it out of 10, and I'll let you guys know where he lands. But I think 5 through 10 are Jalen Carter watch, so be sure to look out for that on draft night. But yeah, Devon Witherspoon going number 6 to Detroit. Number 7, the Vegas Raiders, who also are in need of a corner. They're more desperately in need of a corner. The Lions signed some guys in free agency, but the Raiders are desperately in need of a corner. And they get a guy who is thought by a lot of people to be cornerback 1 in this class, and that's Christian Gonzalez. Christian Gonzalez is the long, rangy, athletic corner from Oregon. He fits in the Raiders' profile as having a guy with really good measurables, a guy with really good ball skills as well. I think that Christian Gonzalez would fill a massive need for this Raiders offense, and if one of those top 4 quarterbacks doesn't fall to 7, I think that they go with their best position available, or I'm sorry, best player available at a position of need, and that's Christian Gonzalez. Number 8, I have the Atlanta Falcons taking Tyree Wilson. Now, I have heard some rumors about Bijan Robinson, and it was very tempting to want to put him here. So maybe you can flip him around with where I have Bijan going, which I'll get to in just a second. But Tyree Wilson, I think, is a really, really good pass rusher. This is a guy who, is considered to be up there with Will Anderson as one of the best edge prospects in this draft. I prefer Will Anderson. Some prefer Tyree Wilson. It just kind of depends on how you slice the cake. But I think Atlanta fills a big need on their defense. An edge rusher, you need guys that can go get after the quarterback. Their defense was really bad last year, and if you can get if you can get Tyree Wilson to be the prospect that you think he can become, he can be a legitimate cornerstone on that defense for many years to come, and will provide Arthur Smith with some stability on that front 7, especially. Next, I have the Bears going into number 9. Now, this is a very interesting pick for me because the Bears originally had the first overall pick, as many of you know. But then they traded down to number 9, and in addition, they acquired, an additional first, an additional second, 2 seconds, and wide receiver DJ Moore. Now, what's interesting about this pick here at number 9 is realistically, the Bears could take at number 9 who they were going to take at number 1 overall. And that's Jalen Carter. Now, I understand the off the field issues. I understand the character concerns. I understand all of that. However, if you feel like you can get the most out of Jalen Carter and that your culture can fix him and you can have him focus on football, stay out of trouble, keep his head down, he's the best player in the draft, in my opinion. Not only is he the best player in the draft, but he fills a massive position of need for the Bears. The Bears' defensive tackles last year were putrid, to say the very least. So to get a guy who is the best player in the draft at your weakest position while trading down and acquiring more assets would be an absolute masterclass by Ryan Poles if it works. Again, if it works with Jalen Carter, if he's able to stay healthy, he's able to stay on the field and keep his head out of trouble, he's legitimately an all-pro defensive tackle, massive position of need, big upside. And again, the Bears went down 8 spots, got all those assets, and could potentially get the best player in the draft. I think that this is a risk worth taking if you're the Bears, and I don't think he'll get past the top 10, so I think it's worth it for the Bears. You got to trust your gut there. Pick number 10, I have Bijan Robinson going to the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, I've heard the rumors about Derrick Henry, and up until this point, that's all they are just rumors. So I don't want to put too much stock into it just yet and say that they're going to pass on Bijan. Here's the thing, though: the Eagles are really just rolling with house money here with a top 10 pick. They have a roster that is, in my opinion, the most complete in all of football. They don't have any definitive weaknesses, and they have this pick because of a great trade. Why not take advantage and take one of the most dynamic players in the draft, a player that I would argue is your biggest position of need at running back. I mean, the starters at running back right now are Rashad Penny, Kenneth Gainwell, and Boston Scott. None of those guys are legit superstars. Why not add another weapon to that offense and make it even more unstoppable? I think, and I'm not going to completely blame this on Miles Sanders, but I think part of the reason they lost the Super Bowl is because Miles Sanders was not having a great game. Um, Bijan Robinson would add such a dynamic level to this offense. He can run. He's got good vision. He's got good contact balance. He's even a threat to catch the ball out of the backfield. I love this move for the Eagles, and I think it would make them easy Super Bowl favorites if they were able to land Bijan Robinson. Next, number 11, the Tennessee Titans. Wouldn't be surprised if they tried to move up to get a quarterback, or if one of the big four falls to them, they would take him here at 11. But with the way that this current draft is shaking out, I have them taking Paris Johnson, the tackle out of Ohio State. Many people regard as the best tackle in this year's draft. Listen, they cut, Taylor Lewan due to injury and issues and stuff like that, and they're going to rebuild. And in order to rebuild, they're going to need to revamp that offensive line. Mike Vrabel is a very physical, tough head coach. He wants to dominate the trenches, and I think that's what you're going to be able to do with Paris Johnson. Paris Johnson, to me, is the best mixture of pass and run blocking. He's a guy that I think would really fit well in most schemes and most systems, and especially with at the moment having Derrick Henry, they're going to want somebody to block and fill that hole that Taylor the one left. So Paris Johnson to me is going to be the pick there at number 11 for the Titans. At pick 12, the Texans, who are the first team to pick twice in this first round, they are going to go with wide receiver. They're going to take the receiver that most people see as the best receiver in this year's draft class. They're going with Jackson Smith and Jigba out of Ohio State. Listen, the guy runs really good routes. He's got good hands. He's able to separate. He's able to get open. Pairing him with, another young quarterback in Will Levis, a guy who I think could really use a security blanket, a guy to go to, when he's not sure what to do with the football. Likelihood is that JSN will be open. And going quarterback and receiver at 2 and 12, I think is a really good combination for the Texans. Really would revitalize their young offense. And build and set for the future. So I like JSN going to the Texans right there. Next, we have now the Green Bay Packers picking at number 13, swapping the 13 and 15 pick with the Jets. The Packers, I think this is a very interesting one, and this was one that tripped me up a little bit, but I think I've come up with a good answer for this. Um, I have the Packers now taking Nolan Smith, the edge rusher out of Georgia. I think his draft stock has risen tremendously after his great combine performance showed what kind of an athlete he is, how fast he is, how twitchy he is. I think Green Bay needs help on the exterior of their defensive line, and what better way to do that than to go get Nolan Smith, one of the most athletic pass rushers in this year's draft class? Listen, I think Justin Fields is going to be the quarterback in Chicago for many years to come, and that dude is a great athlete. You need a guy that has the speed to go hunt him down, and many others. But you got to play Justin Fields twice a year for the next how many years? And this is a guy that can actually legitimately go catch Justin Fields, and he could be a really, really good pass rusher in this league. Speaking of pass rushers, I have the New England Patriots taking Lucas Van Ness, the pass rusher out of Iowa. Listen, Bill Belichick, he loves defensive players, and I think they're going to go with a defensive player here, a guy that I've heard the example of Lucas Van Ness being a ball of clay that you can mold into a superstar pass rusher. I think Bill Belichick loves the opportunity to mold this guy in his image, teach him the way of how to play football the right way, and he can really get the most out of him, I believe. And I think that they really like him as well. I've heard a lot of reports that New England loves Lucas Van Ness. So we shall see where that goes, but I have them taking him at number 14. At pick 15, the New York Jets, I have them going with Peter Skoronski, the offensive lineman out of Northwestern. Listen, now that they officially have Aaron Rodgers, they're going to want to protect him as much as they possibly can. You want to look at, Mekhi Becton, a guy who's probably going to play left tackle. He's had some injury risk in his career so far, so you're not really certain on that. And then Elijah Vera Tucker has been banged up as well at guard, and then who knows who their right tackle is going to be. I think Peter Skoronski has the flexibility to play anywhere at guard or tackle, excuse me. And God forbid, one of those guys gets hurt again. I think you can plug and play him and have no worries. You want to protect Rodgers. You want to keep him upright because you've invested so much draft capital in him. Next, we're going to go to Washington Commanders at pick 16, taking another corner based on my enunciation. I'm sure you could tell. We're going to go with Joey Porter, a guy who I personally have as my corner 2 in this draft class. I love Joey Porter. I think he's great. He's long, he's physical, he's tough, he has good ball skills. I think Ron Rivera really wants another corner to add to that Washington Commanders room. And with the NFC East quarterbacks and receivers getting better and better by the day, I think they need people who can go cover downfield and play the ball in the air. I think this fits Washington's need on defense. It fits what Ron Rivera likes. I've been saying this for months, but if you guys remember Ron Rivera's most successful year as a coach, it was back then with the Panthers in 2015. Who did he have? He had Josh Norman, a dominant physical corner. He's going to get what he hopes is another Josh Norman in Joey Porter at pick 16. Pick 17, speaking of Joey Porter, his dad played for the Steelers, and now we're at pick 17. I think the Steelers are going to go with Darnell Wright, the tackle out of Tennessee. Listen, the Steelers got a lot of young guys on offense. They got Kenny Pickett, George Pickens, Deontay Johnson, Najee Harris. A lot of really good a young nucleus in Pittsburgh is forming. And what are they going to want to do? They're going to want to protect that, right? I think Darnell Wright is a really good pass protector. I think he's probably more comfortable on the right side of the line than he is on the left, which is all right. But I think he's a really good pass protector, and he's a guy that's going to keep Kenny Pickett alive. Could use a little work in his run blocking, but that'll come. But honestly, I think that their main priority is going to be protecting their young offensive stars that they've worked so hard to get. Pick 18 for the Detroit Lions. I have them going with Calijah Kancey, the defensive tackle out of Pittsburgh. I said that at pick 6, they could potentially go with Jalen Carter to fill that need at interior defensive line, but I think they go with it at 18 instead and go with Calijah Kancey, a guy who is smaller, definitely, but is really quick, is really fast, is able to get after the quarterback, which again, in that division, you're going to have to be able to do. Going forward into the playoffs, which the Lions, I'm sure, have playoff aspirations this year, which sounds so weird to say out loud, but they do. Going forward, the Lions are going to want to prioritize their pass rush as much as possible in order to get to that next step of competition. And I think Calijah Kancey is a really, really good pass rushing defensive lineman. Definitely is going to be a big player on third downs. Next, I have Tampa Bay at pick 19, going with another pass rusher, and that's going to be Myles Murphy out of Clemson. This guy's really big. He's like 6'5". He's got good physical tools. I think you need to refine him a little bit on how to be a pass rusher. But again, Todd Bowles is a defensive guy. He was their defensive coordinator when they won the Super Bowl, and their Super Bowl team was predicated off of that defensive line, that Ndamukong Suh, JPP, all of those guys right there. So I think that they're going to love the opportunity to go with one of the class's best edge rushers. At pick 20, my Seattle Seahawks are back on the clock, and they're going to go with another Clemson defensive lineman. That's going to be Brian Bresee. Here's the thing, Seattle's got a big hole at defensive tackle right now. I understand that they signed Draymond Jones and Jaron Reed and all those guys, but I think if you want a really physical, freaky, athletic defensive tackle who can play the run and the pass, it's Brian Bresee. Brian Bresee is he was the number 1 recruit coming out of high school over Bryce Young. He's got a lot of upside. Didn't have such a good year this past season, but he's dealing with a lot of adversity, a lot of off the field issues. Unfortunately, his sister tragically passed away of brain cancer. Dealt with some injuries and stuff, so kind of explained why his year wasn't as good. But I still think I love it for Seattle at 20. Fills a big need and is a guy that has really high upside in my opinion. Speaking of filling a big need, we have pick 21 with the San Diego Chargers. Yes, I say it's San Diego because in my heart and in my mind, they're still San Diego. Anyway, for the Los Angeles Chargers, we're going to go with Jalen Hyatt, the speedy wide receiver out of Tennessee. The Chargers have 2 pretty good receivers in Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. The problem is that they can't separate and they can't stretch down the field. Well, that's what Jalen Hyatt does. He fixes that issue. He's going to be able to stretch that defense as far as it can. He's going to catch some absolute bombs from Justin Herbert, and he's going to give a new dynamic to that Chargers offense that they've been lacking in the last couple of seasons. Pick 22, we're going to go with Deonte Banks to the Baltimore Ravens. I think they need corner help really badly. Outside of Marlon Humphrey. I don't think their corners are very good. I'm not a big fan of Jalen Armour Davis, and I think that the Ravens, if there's one thing they've always had, it's a good defense. And you saw some of the cracks with that last year with the whole secondary. I think Kyle Hamilton is a great piece, and I think Marlon Humphrey is a great piece. But I say, why not add another piece to that and a really good corner in Deonte Banks going to Baltimore? Speaking of corners, another team that really needs corners is the Minnesota Vikings. I have them taking the next best corner on most teams' big board, and that's Cam Smith. He signed Byron Murphy in free agency, and that's good, but he's more of like a slot corner type. I think you need an outside corner. I mean, their secondary was garbage last year. Their defense was so bad. They're gonna fix that in the draft. They have the draft capital. They have the draft capital to go get one of the premier guys. I think they do that in Cam Smith. Next, at number 24, I have the Jacksonville Jaguars taking Brian Branch, the safety from Alabama. Listen, the Jaguars made a really big jump last year. Part of that, or majority of that, was because of the new combo of Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence. They really clicked. They really meshed well together. They have weapons on offense like Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram. Calvin Ridley is now coming into Jacksonville as well. And I think that their focus should be on their secondary. Their focus should be on acquiring more guys for their defensive side of the ball. Brian Branch is a versatile guy. He can play a lot of spots. Love the selection for Jacksonville. Pick 25 for the Giants. Simply put, they need to add more weapons around Daniel Jones. Their number one receiver right now is Darius Slayton. They did make the trade for Darren Waller, which I thought was good, but I think Zay Flowers is the pick here. Get Daniel Jones a more dynamic weapon. Get him some more receivers. I think that is the best thing for the Giants to do there. Next, Dallas Cowboys. They're going to go with tight end Dalton Kincaid out of Utah. Listen, Dalton Schultz left. I think that they want to prioritize weapons for Dak, who right now doesn't have a lot outside of CeeDee Lamb to throw the ball to. Dalton Kincaid is what most people consider to be the best receiving tight end in this year's draft class, and it's something that Dallas is going to need going forward. So I expect Dalton Kincaid to go to the Cowboys. Number 27, I have the Buffalo Bills taking Jordan Addison, the receiver out of USC. They need a number two receiver outside of Stephon Diggs. Their offense right now is predicated on basically Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs playing hero ball with each other. Their offensive line isn't great. They can't really run the ball, and they don't really have a number two option at receiver, unfortunately. They get Josh Allen his number two option in Jordan Addison, who is a smooth, silky route runner, can catch the ball well, can divert some of the attention away from Stephon Diggs over there. Number 28, the Cincinnati Bengals, they're going to go with Jahmyr Gibbs. Ian Rappaport said this week that he expects Jahmyr Gibbs to go in the first round. And in looking at the big board, I think the Bengals are one of the teams that make the most amount of sense. I think that they are probably going to move on from Joe Mixon after the draft. And Jahmyr Gibbs is a guy who fits really well the style of their offense, I feel like. He's a good runner of the football. He's good in the open field. And I think most importantly, he's a really, really good pass catcher. He can play a big part of that pass-heavy offense in Cincinnati, and he can rack up a lot of touchdowns from Joe Burrow. Number 29, the New Orleans Saints. They're going to go with Keion White, the edge rusher from Georgia Tech. I think that, the Saints are in a bad spot as a franchise, and they don't have a high premium pick to go do something about it yet. So they're going to take a guy with a lot of upside and Keion White, hopefully to rebuild their defensive line. Cam Jordan's getting older. How long is he going to play? We don't know. But I think Keion White is hopefully a cornerstone for them for years to come. Going into our last two, our Super Bowl teams, I think the Eagles are going to go with Emmanuel Forbes, the corner. Darius Slay and James Bradbury are good, but they're a lot older than you would like your top two corners to be. They're also going to be expensive down the line. I think they address that spot sooner rather than later. Take a pick in this year's draft. I mean, you have two picks in the first round. Might as well take a corner with one of them. They take Emmanuel Forbes to solidify their corner room. And then the last pick of the draft, I have the Kansas City Chiefs taking Quentin Johnston. I like this pick for a couple of reasons. A, their receiver room is weak right now. It's not very good. Doesn't have a lot of star power. B, the receivers that they do have are a lot of smaller slot guys like Sky Moore, like Kadarius Toney. C, I think Quentin Johnston has the measurables to be a dominant wide receiver in this league. And if there's one thing Andy Reid knows how to do, it is get the most out of talented players. You see that with Patrick Mahomes, you see that with Travis Kelce, et cetera, et cetera. They're going to like Quentin Johnston in Kansas City. But that's my draft pick. That is my mock. That's my draft. That's my mock draft. Let me know what you guys think down below. This is my last mock before the NFL draft. Hopefully, I got a lot right. I'm really hoping that this is as accurate as possible. But I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys think down below. I will catch you in tomorrow's video. Peace out.